If you ever want to know what it feels like to have your heart stop, not from fear, but from white-hot fury, try getting a call from a hospital 1,300 miles away saying your 15-year-old son was found alone at a truck stop with no wallet, no phone, and no idea how he got there. I'm not a violent man, but in that moment, I swear I could have broken someone's jaw just by looking at them. My name's Miles. I'm 42, a single dad, and I live in Colorado Springs with my son, Liam. He's been my whole world ever since his mom passed away when he was 10. Cancer. It was brutal, fast, and it left a crater in both our lives that we've spent years trying to fill. I'm not perfect, but I've done everything I can to raise Liam right. Kept him in good schools, made sure he always had someone to talk to, and most importantly, taught him never to let anyone treat him like he was less than. I thought I was doing okay, until family started getting in the way. See, here's the thing. I come from a very opinionated family. My side's mostly scattered, but Liam's mom, Carla, had this huge extended clan of devout, traditional Christian types who loved nothing more than to remind me I wasn't doing things the right way. After Carla died, I kept a bit of distance, but I never cut them off completely. Liam deserved to know his mother's family, even if they were a bit intense. At least, that's what I told myself. But looking back, I should have slammed that door years ago. The biggest thorn in my side? Her brother. My former brother-in-law, Kent. 45, smug as a car salesman with a Bible in his glove box, and the kind of guy who believes respect is owed to him just for showing up. He'd always rubbed me the wrong way, even when Carla was alive, but I tolerated him. He was her big brother, and she loved him. I'd put up with his passive-aggressive digs at my parenting, his fake concern over how soft Liam was becoming, his constant backhanded compliments about how clean our house was for a bachelor pad. I let it roll off my back. But Kent was like a termite. Quiet at first, unseen. Then suddenly, the foundation is crumbling. He lives down in Texas with his wife, Bethany, and their 3 kids, who range from obnoxiously loud to borderline feral. They homeschool, go to church 5 days a week, and believe that spanking is not only biblical but mandatory. Every time they visited, Liam would come back from family bonding time with some new insecurity or story about how Uncle Kent had scolded him for everything from not knowing how to gut a fish to wearing feminine shoes. One time, Liam told me Kent took his phone away and made him read Proverbs out loud for an hour because he rolled his eyes when someone said grace. That was the first real red flag. I confronted Kent afterward, calmly, directly. I said I appreciated him spending time with Liam, but I didn't agree with his methods and wanted him to be more respectful of our parenting boundaries. Kent laughed, like I told a joke. "Brother," he said, always with that fake preacher voice. "You're raising a boy in a woman's world. That kid needs discipline. He needs a man to teach him how the world really works. You're too close to see it, but one day he'll thank me." I wanted to punch him. "Instead," I said, "if you ever pull something like that again, you won't be seeing him at all." He just smiled and said, "We'll see." We didn't talk much after that. A year went by without much contact. Liam was thriving. He'd joined the school's drama club, started learning guitar, and even got his first part-time job at a local bookstore. He was growing into this thoughtful, funny, emotionally intelligent young man. Sensitive, sure, but never weak. He spoke up when something felt wrong. He defended his friends. He didn't let people push him around. I was proud of the person he was becoming. But then Bethany reached out that spring, saying they were planning a family values summer retreat with all the cousins at their ranch in Texas. One of her kids was turning 13, and they were going to do some kind of rite of passage weekend. She invited Liam. She said it would be a good way to reconnect with his roots. Liam didn't want to go. I didn't blame him, but I also didn't want to rob him of the choice. So I told him it was up to him. He mulled it over, said maybe it wouldn't be so bad. He missed a few of the cousins, and I think some part of him wanted to give them another chance. Maybe he thought Kent had mellowed out. He hadn't. I should have trusted my gut. The moment I dropped Liam off at the airport, something felt off. Kent barely made eye contact. Bethany smiled like a Stepford wife. Liam hugged me tight and said, "Call me every night, okay?" I promised I would. Only, I couldn't. Because 3 days in, Liam stopped responding. At first, I figured he was busy. Activities, spotty signal, maybe just having fun. But then a day turned into 2. Then 3. I texted, called, emailed. Nothing. I finally called Bethany, who picked up on the second ring with a chirpy, "Hey there, Miles." I asked if Liam was okay. "Oh, he's fine," she said too quickly. "You know how kids are. He probably just misplaced his phone." I asked to speak to him. There was a pause. "Well, he's not here right now. Out with Kent and the boys, doing some team-building exercises. You know, man stuff." I didn't like that. Not one bit. My stomach twisted and my voice dropped. "Where's my son?" That's when she got defensive. Said I was overreacting. Said Liam needed to be challenged. That Kent has everything under control. I didn't hear from Liam for 2 more days. And then I got the call. A nurse at a small clinic in Missouri told me they'd found a teenager wandering into a truck stop, dehydrated and shaking. He didn't have ID, but he remembered my number. He told them his name was Liam. He'd been left there, dropped off by a man in a Ford pickup, told to figure out how to get home. The nurse said, "He's safe now. But he's traumatized. Whatever happened, it wasn't okay." I couldn't breathe. I got in my car that night and started driving. Took me almost a full day to reach him. When I finally walked into that clinic and saw him, curled up in a blanket, clutching a paper cup of soup like it was the only warm thing left in the world, I nearly broke down. He didn't cry, just looked up at me with this hollow, tired expression and said, "I thought he was going to leave me there forever." He wasn't talking about a stranger. He was talking about Kent. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to be a phone call or a polite family fallout. This was war. And I was going to make sure Kent never forgot what he'd done. But I had to be smart. Because if I came at him swinging, he'd play the victim. He'd twist the story. He'd make it sound like Liam was being dramatic, that I was overreacting. He'd gaslight, manipulate, and lean on that holier-than-thou church reputation he'd built like a fortress. So I started digging. I started building. And piece by piece, I laid the groundwork for something he wouldn't see coming. Something ironclad. Something legal. Something public. But before any of that, I had to know the full story from Liam's mouth. And when he finally told me what happened on that ranch, my blood ran cold. Because this wasn't just about teaching respect. It was about control. It was about power. And it nearly broke my son. I waited until we were halfway home, somewhere between Kansas City and Denver, before I asked him to tell me everything. I didn't want to push. He'd been silent most of the ride, staring out the window like the trees held secrets he couldn't yet speak out loud. But as the sun started dipping behind the hills and the shadows stretched long across the highway, he finally broke the silence. "Dad," he said, voice barely above a whisper. He didn't just drop me off. He made me get out of the truck. Said if I was such a smart mouth, I could figure life out on my own. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. He left me with nothing. No cash. No phone. Not even water. He said real men don't cry and real men don't beg. I swallowed hard. My knuckles were white. But I forced myself to keep calm, for Liam's sake. I knew if I let the rage take over, he might clam up again. "Start from the beginning," I said. "Tell me everything. Take your time." And he did. It started the first night he got to Kent's place. They picked him up from the airport and barely said 2 words to him the entire drive to their ranch. No small talk. No "how have you been?" Just Kent lecturing one of his own sons in the front seat for forgetting to wear a belt to the airport. When they arrived, Liam's suitcase was left in the bed of the truck overnight. By the time he found it the next morning, the ranch dogs had peed on it. Bethany scolded him for leaving his things lying around. Strike 1. That first weekend, Kent ran what he called manhood workshops. It was all firewood chopping, rifle handling, memorizing verses about obedience, and early morning runs through fields filled with thorny brush. Liam wasn't used to that kind of physical labor, especially not under the Texas summer sun, and when he asked for a break after cutting his thumb with a splintered axe handle, Kent laughed in his face. "No breaks in life, boy," he said. "You think the devil's going to give you a juice box and a nap when things get hard?" Liam said the boys laughed. All of them, even the younger ones. He wasn't allowed to call me. Kent claimed there was no cell service, even though Liam spotted Kent taking calls on the porch several times. When he asked to use the landline, Bethany said it was only for emergencies. Strike 2. At meals, they sat in silence unless spoken to. Liam once said grace, too casually, and Kent made him repeat it 3 times until he sounded more convicted. Then they made him wash dishes alone that night as a penance. One day, Liam tried to opt out of a game where the boys wrestled each other blindfolded in the mud. "I just didn't feel right about it," he told me. It didn't seem like bonding. It felt like they were waiting to hurt someone. So Kent singled him out, mocked him in front of everyone. Looks like city boy here's afraid of a little dirt. You want to sit with the womenfolk instead? Go braid some hair. The others laughed. Some nervously, some with glee. Liam felt like the ground had swallowed him whole. That night, Kent took him aside, sat him down in the barn, and gave him the talk. But not that talk. Not the one about puberty or responsibility. This one was about me. He told me you were raising me wrong, Liam said. That I was too soft. That you were turning me into one of those people who think feelings matter more than truth. That I needed to be broken down to be built back up. My jaw clenched. He said you were a weak man. That mom would have wanted better. That one stung. Deep. But I kept driving. Kept breathing. Let Liam speak. He said the final straw happened the morning of day 5. He had enough. He tried to call me using Kent's phone while it was left charging on the counter. Kent caught him mid-dial and lost it. He didn't hit me, Liam said. But he got real close. Grabbed my shoulder and shoved me back. Told me I wasn't a prisoner, but I was a guest, and guests don't get to break house rules. He said I'd learned some respect one way or another. That afternoon, Kent announced they were going to town to get supplies. Told Liam to come with him. Liam didn't think much of it, until they stopped at a truck stop an hour and a half away from the ranch. Kent pulled into the far end of the lot, killed the engine, and looked at Liam with dead eyes. I don't think you understand what it means to be a man, he said. So here's a crash course. Then he handed Liam a beat-up copy of the Bible, a $5 bill, and said, You want to act grown? Figure out how to get home like one. Then he drove off. Just like that. Liam stood there for an hour, not believing it was real. Then, too, the sun started going down, and a clerk at the truck stop noticed him sitting on the curb, holding back tears. She called for help. He was so lucky it was her. It could have been anyone. Anything could have happened. By the time Liam finished telling me this, we were only an hour from home. I had to pull over. I got out of the car, walked into the tree line, and screamed. Not words, just rage. When I came back, Liam was watching me. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't think. No, I said. Don't you dare apologize. You didn't do a single thing wrong. I wanted to hug him, but I could tell he was overwhelmed. So I just sat beside him in the car until he asked to keep going. That night, I didn't sleep. Liam went straight to bed, curled up with the cat, like she was a life raft. I stayed up researching. Every law, every precedent, every case where something like this had happened. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was focused. Because Kent hadn't just hurt my son emotionally, he'd abandoned a minor. That was criminal. And more than that, it was personal. And I wasn't going to let it go. The next morning, I called the police in Missouri. Then I called a family attorney I knew through a friend. Then I called Liam's school counselor and asked if she could speak with him about what happened, get some kind of written record. Every move I made sure it was documented. Bethany tried to call 3 days later. I let it ring. Then she sent a text. I hope Liam made it home safely. We were very concerned when he ran off. Ran off. She was already spinning the narrative. I replied with a single line. Your husband left my son at a truck stop. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. She didn't respond. But Kent did. 2 hours later, I got a voicemail. His voice was calmer than I expected, but there was a crack in it, like a pastor trying to hold it together in front of a congregation that just saw him lose it. Miles, look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Liam needed some tough love, that's all. Boys these days don't know struggle. I was trying to help. I never meant for things to go too far. I didn't call him back. Instead, I saved the message. Liam was already meeting with the counselor once a week. I made sure the school knew about what had happened and why he might seem more withdrawn than usual. They were understanding. His teachers offered flexibility with assignments. The principal even gave him a number for a youth therapist they worked with. Meanwhile, I filed a police report in Colorado. Then I followed up with Missouri law enforcement and shared Liam's full statement. I gave them the voicemail, the texts, the name of the nurse who first contacted me. And then I started thinking about Kent's world, his real weakness, his image. He wasn't just a strict dad. He was a youth pastor, ran workshops, gave sermons about protecting children, was slated to lead a Men of Integrity conference that fall at one of the largest churches in their county. And something told me, the congregation might want to know what he considered integrity. But I wasn't going to go public until I had everything in place, until I had proof. And that meant one more thing, getting Liam to talk. On record. Not to the police, at least, not yet, but to someone else. A mediator. A therapist. Someone who could help him process what had happened and verify that trauma was involved. Because the case I was building wasn't just for legal consequences. It was for every ounce of damage Ken had caused. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Bethany showed up. At my doorstep, smiling like she'd brought cookies. And what she said next shook me to my core. I almost didn't recognize her at first. It was early evening, a week after Liam had started therapy, and I was in the middle of prepping dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. Liam was upstairs in his room, practicing a song on his guitar, something soft and slow. It was the first time I'd heard music from that room in over 2 weeks, and the sound had me feeling cautiously hopeful, like things might start healing. Then came the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. We hadn't had visitors in days, and I hadn't told anyone from Carla's side of the family where we lived now. Part of me had wanted to keep them at arm's length since everything happened. But when I opened the door, there she was. Bethany, wearing a peach-colored cardigan, a tight-lipped smile, and holding a glass casserole dish wrapped in a dish towel, like this was some kind of suburban peace offering. The sheer audacity almost knocked the wind out of me. "Miles," she said sweetly, tilting her head like she was starring in a Hallmark movie. "I hope I'm not intruding." I didn't say a word at first. I was too busy taking her in. The freshly styled hair, the glossy nails, the cross necklace tucked into her blouse. She looked put together, calculated. Like this wasn't a spontaneous visit at all. She extended the dish. "Chicken and rice. I figured you and Liam could use a home-cooked meal." I didn't take it. She kept her arm outstretched for a few seconds longer, then slowly lowered it when she realized I wasn't going to pretend we were neighbors or friends or anything short of adversaries at this point. "I'm going to say this once," I said. "You need to leave." Her smile barely wavered. "Miles, I came here to talk. You've got things all twisted around. I thought if we could just sit down and—" "You and your husband abandoned my son." I cut in, voice sharp. "At a truck stop. In another state. No money. No phone. No way home." Her smile faltered then, just slightly. "That's not how it happened. Don't gaslight me. I have Liam's statement. The nurse's call log. A voicemail from Kent trying to cover his tracks." Bethany's eyes darted away for a second, but she regrouped fast. "You're letting Liam tell you a story that suits his version of events," she said, stepping just a little closer. "He's a child, Miles. And children exaggerate. You know that. Kent didn't leave him in danger. He was nearby the whole time, just trying to teach a little independence." "That's not teaching," I said coldly. "That's abuse." Bethany's voice lowered to a whisper. "You're going to destroy this family. Over a misunderstanding." I stared at her. "You destroyed it the second you stood by while your husband traumatized a 15-year-old kid." She didn't answer that. Instead, she glanced over my shoulder, toward the stairs. "Is he here?" she asked. I stepped forward and closed the gap between us. "You're not going anywhere near him." Her face finally cracked then. A flicker of something between frustration and desperation broke through her practiced poise. "Miles, you're making a mistake. Kent and I, we thought we were doing the right thing. But this crusade you're on, it's going to backfire. You think people are going to side with you over a respected man of the church." Oh, there it was. Not remorse. Not guilt. Fear. Fear that I had more power than she thought. Fear that I was getting traction. That the image they'd built of the perfect Christian family was starting to crumble. I didn't say anything. Just slowly closed the door in her face. She didn't knock again. Instead, she left the casserole on the porch and walked back to her car without looking back. I didn't touch the food. I threw it in the trash the second she drove off. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head, analyzing her every word. The way she twisted reality like a rubber band, stretching it until it snapped into whatever shape suited her. But something else nagged at me. Something in her tone, something about the way she said, "We thought we were doing the right thing." It felt rehearsed, like she'd said it before, to someone else. The next morning, I called the school counselor. She told me Liam had been quiet that week, but cooperative. He hadn't gone into full detail about what happened yet, just fragments. But she said he was beginning to open up. She agreed to loop in a licensed therapist with trauma experience and offered to provide a letter if legal proceedings moved forward. I thanked her and hung up. Then I made another call, to Carla's cousin, Rachel. Now, Rachel and I had always gotten along, even after Carla passed. She lived out in Oregon and didn't see the rest of the family much, but she kept up with us over holidays. She'd always been a bit of the black sheep, too liberal, too outspoken, and, as Bethany once put it, too opinionated to be a godly woman. In other words, my kind of people. When she picked up, I asked her straight, "Did Bethany talk to you recently?" She paused. "Yes, she did. About a week ago." I felt my stomach drop. "What did she say?" Rachel sighed. That Liam had some kind of breakdown during the trip. That he lashed out at Kent, ran away from the ranch, and made up some story to cover his tracks. She said you were being manipulated. That you were, her words, weaponizing a troubled child against his own family. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "She's building a defense," I muttered. Rachel's voice dropped. "Miles." I didn't believe her. "I know, Liam. I know you. But I think she's telling the same story to everyone she can. Probably trying to control the narrative before word spreads." That changed everything. It wasn't just damage control. It was a campaign. And then Rachel said something that hit me harder than anything yet. She sent a letter to the pastor of their church. I froze. What kind of letter? I don't know the contents, but she mentioned it during our call. Said she was going to make sure the church understood what was happening before lies took root. I hung up and sat on the edge of the couch, heart pounding. Because now I understood. They weren't just trying to sweep this under the rug. They were trying to erase it, rewrite it, paint Liam as a rebellious, unstable teenager and me as the bitter widower poisoning him against his mother's family. And if they got to the church first, if they preempted the legal action with carefully crafted lies, they could ruin our case. So I moved faster. I spent the next 2 days compiling every document, every message, every record. I spoke with the truck stop clerk, the nurse. I even managed to get a copy of the surveillance footage from the clinic entrance the day Liam was brought in. It showed him entering alone, disoriented, shaky, clutching the Bible Kent had given him. The timestamp was 2 hours after Kent claimed he dropped him off for a short break. That footage was gold. It wouldn't prove everything, but it supported everything. Then came the betrayal I didn't see coming. I was at work, teaching a class at the community college, when I got a call from Liam's school. The secretary said Liam had been pulled from class. By Kent. He claimed to be picking Liam up for a family emergency. My vision blurred. "I never authorized that," I snapped. She hesitated. "We called your number. You didn't answer." He said he was on the emergency contact list. He had been, years ago, back when Carla passed, and I wanted Liam to have extended family listed just in case. I'd forgotten to update the list. "Where are they now?" I demanded. She told me they'd already left. I hung up and drove like a madman. Tried calling Liam. No answer. Tried calling Kent. Straight to voicemail. I called the police. Explained everything, briefly, urgently, and gave them all the information I had. The make of Kent's truck, the plate number, the last known direction. I called the school again and begged them to fax over the pickup form Kent had signed. 10 minutes later, it came through. The signature didn't even match his ID. He'd forged it. My knees buckled when I realized it. This wasn't just about manipulation anymore. It wasn't just about narrative control. Ken had taken my son. Again. And this time, he wasn't going to let him go so easily. I didn't drive home. I drove to the nearest police station. The officer at the front desk gave me that wary, slow-blinking look. The kind that says he's seen 100 panicked dads today and doesn't know yet if I'm one of the sane ones. I didn't yell. Didn't pace. Didn't throw accusations. I slid the forged signature across the counter, along with a neatly printed folder of every document I'd been compiling for the past 2 weeks. Kent's picture, Liam's picture, the plate number of the truck, statements from the nurse, the clerk, the voicemail from Kent, even the surveillance footage timestamp. "Sir," I said calmly, voice shaking just slightly, "my son was taken from his school without my consent by a man who already left him stranded across state lines once. He is not authorized, and I have proof." That got his attention. An hour later, I was sitting in a back room with a family officer, filing a formal report for custodial interference. They made calls to the school district, to CPS, to Missouri PD. They confirmed Kent's plate had triggered a speed camera heading south just 20 minutes after picking Liam up, toward Texas. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It was like the walls of my mind were collapsing in on themselves. I kept picturing Liam in that truck again, trapped in silence, too afraid to speak, being fed lies about me, about himself. That oppressive Texas heat rising up like it had the first time, the landscape all dry and empty, nowhere to run. And Kent, smiling behind the wheel, calm and cruel, preaching discipline while building a new cage around him. This time, it wasn't a lesson. This was kidnapping. But they didn't call it that. At least, not yet. Not until the legal gray got cleared up. Colorado laws were strict, but the fact that Kent was on the emergency contact list, even outdated, meant it would take more than a forged signature to press criminal charges. Still, the officer told me they'd issued a bolo, be on the lookout. Said they'd notify the highway patrol along Kent's likely route. They'd alert Texas law enforcement, too, and contact Child Protective Services there. The wheels were turning, but none of it was fast enough. By the time I got home, it was dark. The house felt cold and brittle. I walked up to Liam's room and stood in the doorway, staring at the unmade bed, the guitar on the stand, the crumpled hoodie on the floor. The smell of his shampoo still lingered in the air. Something about it broke me. I sat down on his bed and cried. Not loudly, not with sobs, just quietly, eyes burning, shoulders trembling, hands curled into fists like I could punch the pain back down if I tried hard enough. It wasn't just that he was gone. It was how he was taken. The betrayal. The precision. The confidence Kent must have had to walk into that school, sign a name that wasn't his, and drive off without fear of consequence. It wasn't panic that fueled him. It was entitlement. He believed Liam belonged to him, that I didn't matter, that my parenting was irrelevant, that his vision of what Liam should be, obedient, rugged, unquestioning, was more valid than my son's freedom or my rights as a father. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in Liam's room for hours, laptop on my lap, combing through every angle of the case I could find. I reached out to advocacy groups. I joined forums for parents dealing with family abductions. I made a list, every agency, every number, every person I could think of who might have power Kent didn't anticipate. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning. But the next day nearly broke me again. I got a call from Rachel. She'd been monitoring Bethany's social media since the whole thing started, just in case something slipped. She texted me a screenshot before we spoke. It was from Bethany's Facebook. A photo of Liam sitting at a long wooden dinner table, surrounded by Kent's boys, all smiling. In front of them were Bibles, candles, and steaming plates of food. Liam wasn't smiling. His head was down. His hair looked damp, like he'd just come in from outside. The caption read, "Grateful to have all our boys home again. Rebuilding family bonds with faith and love. Folded hands #family first #God's plan." I couldn't breathe. Rachel's voice came through my phone, tight with rage. She posted this publicly, Miles. She's not even hiding it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water just to keep my hands busy. I kept the glass against my lips to stop them from trembling. I had to stay calm. I had to stay focused. They were painting a story. That Liam had come home. That I was the bitter outsider. That this was just a wholesome family reunion, with no mention of forged signatures, police reports, or truck stops. But now I knew where he was. The background of the photo was Kent's kitchen. I recognized the cabinets. I'd helped install them 10 years ago when Carla and I visited for Easter. I had a location. That was something. I sent the image to the police, then to my lawyer, then to the therapist Liam had spoken to last week, who immediately flagged it with child services, citing ongoing emotional manipulation and coercion. And then I waited. The hours crawled. No one had heard from Kent. The highway patrol hadn't spotted him. The school tightened its pickup protocols and apologized profusely. But it didn't undo the fact that Liam was gone. Again, that night, I called his phone just to hear the voicemail. His voice, still 15, still trying to sound more confident than he really was. "Hey, it's Liam. I probably lost my phone again. Leave a message and I'll get back to you when I find it. Unless it's Dad, then yes." I remembered to clean the litter box. I smiled. A sad, broken smile. Then I left him a message. "Hey, buddy. It's me. I'm coming to get you, okay? No matter how far. No matter how long. I promise you, you're not alone. Just hang in there." I paused, then added, "And I'm sorry. I should have never let you go back to them. I know that now." I hung up. I spent the next day calling churches. Kent's church, nearby ones. Anyone in a 100-mile radius who might be connected to their family. At first, people stonewalled me. But after I dropped a few key phrases, custodial interference, forged documents, police report filed, a few cracks started to show. One secretary, an older woman with a gravelly voice, finally broke the pattern. "Are you Liam's dad?" she asked cautiously. "Yes," I said. "Do you know where he is?" There was a pause. "I can't say officially, but there's been some talk. Some of the ladies in the prayer group are upset. Said something about Kent keeping a boy at the ranch even after the authorities called." I sat down hard in my chair. "They know," she sighed. "People talk. But around here, reputation's everything. No one wants to be the one to throw the first stone, you know? Even if the target deserves it." I wanted to ask her for more, but she hung up before I could. Still, it confirmed something big. Kent wasn't hiding this out of guilt. He was bragging about it, preaching it, probably calling it a redemption story or a fatherless boy brought back to the flock. Liam wasn't just under lock and key. He was being used as a prop, as a living sermon. I stared at the photo again. The way Liam's hands were clenched on the table, the downward angle of his eyes, the way no one seemed to notice he wasn't smiling. And then I noticed something else. A faint outline near the top right corner. A plaque on the wall behind him. I zoomed in. It read, "Circle of Grace Youth Home." It wasn't just a ranch anymore. Kent had registered part of their property as a faith-based youth rehabilitation ministry. He'd turned it into an unlicensed camp, and my son was being kept there. I picked up the phone and called CPS again. But this time, I said something different. "This isn't just a custody issue," I said. "This is false imprisonment under the guise of religious counseling. My son is being held at an illegal youth home without my consent, and I can prove it." And this time, they listened. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was that Kent wasn't done. Not even close. The next day, I received a letter. Certified mail. Return address, the Circle of Grace Ministry. Inside, a printed document. A petition for emergency guardianship of Liam. Signed by Kent. Co-signed by a pastor. And accompanied by a statement claiming I was emotionally unstable, manipulating a grieving child, and refusing to support Liam's moral development. There was even a signed affidavit from one of the youth ministers claiming Liam had begged to stay at the ranch because I was poisoning his spirit. It was a lie. All of it was a lie. And yet, they filed it in a local Texas court. If the judge granted it, even temporarily, I could lose custody until a formal review, which could take weeks or longer. I stared at the papers, hands numb. I felt like the world was collapsing. But I didn't rage this time. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. Then I started typing, because if Kent wanted a war, I'd give him one. Quietly. Precisely. And this time, I wouldn't just take Liam back. I'd burn down the entire kingdom Kent had built. Brick by brick. Lie by lie. And the first blow was coming from someone Kent had underestimated more than anyone. Me. I didn't sleep the night I got the emergency guardianship papers. But I wasn't pacing the floor or wallowing in panic this time. I was printing, organizing, highlighting, planning. By sunrise, my kitchen table looked like a command center, stacked with color-coded folders, sticky notes, timelines, police reports, school documentation, text messages, and screenshots. I had an email thread with the school counselor, a signed affidavit from the nurse who first took Liam in, a copy of the security footage from the truck stop clinic, and now, thanks to Rachel, a growing list of messages from Bethany's own Facebook posts that directly contradicted the court claims Ken had made. I even found one status she posted 3 days prior that said, "Liam is learning so much down here, even if he's a bit stubborn. I think he's finally opening his heart to us again." That single sentence did more damage to Kent's legal case than he probably realized. Because Liam being down here directly proved he wasn't in my custody. And finally opening his heart sounded a whole lot like someone who was staying against their will. The lie unraveled itself. But it wasn't enough to just poke holes. I needed a hammer. That's when I contacted a lawyer named Melissa Rains. She came recommended by one of the family advocacy groups I'd reached out to online. Specializes in interstate custody battles, religious abuse cases, and unlicensed youth programs. She had a calm voice, but sharp eyes, like someone who'd sat across from predators in tailored suits one too many times. After I sent her everything, we met over Zoom that afternoon. She didn't blink once during the entire call. "This is the worst misuse of faith-based guardianship I've seen in 5 years," she said. We're going to file a countersuit. We're also going to notify the state licensing board, because this circle of grace setup, I've seen this kind of thing before. Most of them collapse under even mild scrutiny. I nodded. What do you need from me? She smiled. Honestly, you've already done most of the legwork. Now let me bring it home. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. And from there, things moved fast. Melissa filed an emergency injunction in Colorado that same day, challenging the Texas petition and asserting full custody under Colorado jurisdiction. Since Liam was still legally a resident of Colorado, the local judge granted us a temporary restraining order against Kent that barred him from contacting Liam or removing him from school again. That gave us leverage. But the win didn't stop there. The Texas court, thanks to Melissa's fireproof countersuit, put a hold on the guardianship petition pending further investigation. Then CPS out of Austin showed up at Kent's ranch 2 days later for an unannounced welfare check. And guess what they found? 12 boys. Only 2 were Kent's. The rest? Kids from troubled homes, bad influences, soft fathers, and faithless cities. Some of the kids had been there for months. No permits, no medical staff, no registered counseling credentials, no paper trail. Kent's ministry was an illegal conversion therapy camp posing as a Christian youth home. And now, it was under full investigation. They called me the next day to tell me Liam was being taken into protective custody until he could be safely returned across state lines. I cried when I heard his voice. He sounded tired, fragile. But when the CPS worker handed him the phone and he heard me say his name, he let out this tiny, shaky breath, like he'd been holding it since the moment Kent picked him up from school. "Dad," he whispered. "I'm right here, buddy." His voice cracked. I didn't believe him. I swear. I couldn't get out. "I know," I said. "And you don't have to anymore. It's over." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, "Can you come get me? I'm already on my way." I made the drive from Colorado Springs to Central Texas in a straight shot. 15 hours, 2 gas stops, no sleep. I pulled into the CPS office parking lot at 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before they opened. By 9 o'clock, I was holding my son. He looked different, paler, thinner. His eyes darted when he moved, like he still half expected someone to grab him and drag him back into a barn to pray the rebellion out of him. But the second he saw me, his legs moved before his thoughts did. He ran into my arms like he was 5 years old again and had just woken up from a nightmare. And I held him, tightly. "I got you," I whispered. "They don't get to touch you again." We stayed in a hotel that night, ordered greasy pizza, and watched old episodes of Mythbusters under the covers like nothing had ever happened. He barely ate, but he smiled once when I cracked a joke about Kent probably offering the devil a handshake if it came with a church donation. The next morning, I called Melissa and told her Liam was safe. She said, "Good, because it's time we go public." And that's when the tide really turned. Melissa drafted a carefully worded press release, not naming Liam directly, but outlining the case in full. She passed it through the local news first. Just a small online piece about a faith-based youth ministry under investigation for unlawful detainment of minors. But the headline exploded, because it didn't stop there. Turns out, another parent saw the article and recognized the name Circle of Grace. Their son had spent 6 weeks there the previous year and came home with severe anxiety and sleep issues. But they'd never filed a complaint because they didn't think anyone would believe them. Now they had reason to. Then a third parent came forward, and a fourth. By the end of the week, 7 separate families had contacted Melissa. Kent's empire? It was crumbling. He tried to do damage control, of course. Claimed it was all miscommunication. That his reputation was being smeared by secular lies. That Liam had been rescued, not abducted. But Melissa had already sent cease and desist letters to every single board member of the church. And that's when I realized something remarkable. The more Kent spoke, the more people saw through him. His sermons got quieter. His circle of supporters thinned out. And one Sunday morning, Rachel sent me a photo. Kent, standing in front of an almost empty congregation, holding a mic with both hands like he was afraid it might fall apart if he let go. The caption said, 16 families left the church this week. He's begging now. I won't pretend everything healed overnight. Liam struggled. He flinched when doors opened too fast. Hated sudden noises. Couldn't stand the smell of wood smoke for months. But therapy helped. His counselor was patient, gentle, and gave him space to reclaim his voice. I started working from home more often, made time for long walks. We rejoined the community theater together, even if Liam didn't want to audition again just yet. He helped with set design and lights. I watched him laugh with the crew backstage one night, and I nearly broke down again, but this time from relief. He was coming back, and I wasn't just his protector anymore. I was becoming a voice for other parents, too. Melissa asked if I'd be willing to speak on a panel about unlicensed youth ministries and the dangers of religious coercion. I agreed, nervously. Public speaking isn't really my thing. But when I told Liam, he smiled. Really smiled, for the first time in weeks. Just don't wear that sweater you always wear when you're nervous, he said. I don't get nervous, I lied. He rolled his eyes. You wear it every tax season. We both laughed. And in that moment, I realized something else. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about resilience. We'd survived something horrific, but we weren't hiding from it. We were using it. And soon, it would all come to a head. Because Ken had been subpoenaed, and a hearing date had been set. The court would finally see the truth. And the man who tried to break my son was about to be broken by the very system he thought he could manipulate. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically, just sterile. Like the air itself didn't care who won or lost. Justice wasn't warm. It was indifferent. It didn't care that Kent used to pray over dinner or that Liam still flinched whenever he heard boots on wood floors. It didn't care that I hadn't slept properly in weeks or that Melissa kept a steel thermos of black coffee by her side like it was armor. But that was okay, because I cared. And I had built a case so airtight it could suffocate a lie before it even left Kent's lips. The hearing was scheduled as a joint proceeding. Review of the emergency guardianship Ken had filed in Texas, our Colorado countersuit, and the preliminary findings from the CPS investigation. Melissa told me Ken had pushed for a private hearing, tried claiming media bias and emotional interference from secular influence, but the judge denied it. Good. Let the world hear it. The courtroom was small, but packed. A few local reporters, CPS reps, a counselor who'd worked with Liam, and even Rachel, who flew in just to sit in the second row and glare at Bethany like her eyes could melt steel. Kent sat at the defense table in a muted navy suit that looked like it hadn't been tailored in a decade. Bethany sat beside him, looking thinner and more brittle than before, probably from watching their social circle implode. Liam wasn't present. We'd all agreed it was better for his emotional recovery to avoid direct confrontation. But his testimony was present, recorded via affidavit, signed by both his therapist and counselor. And when Melissa submitted it into evidence, she did so with the poise of someone sliding a knife between armor plates. Kent's lawyer, some uptight guy in a gray three-piece who looked like he'd walked off a used car lot, tried to object. Unverified account from a minor, he argued. Melissa leaned forward. Verified by 2 licensed professionals, Your Honor, and corroborated by medical intake forms, witness statements, and photographic evidence. The judge raised an eyebrow at the objection. Overruled. Strike 1. Melissa's strategy was simple. Don't waste time with the emotional appeals. Let the facts bury him. She laid out the sequence of events with surgical precision. Kent forged a signature on a school pickup form. Kent transported a minor across state lines without parental consent. Kent operated an unlicensed youth program on private land, offering behavior correction under religious doctrine. Multiple other families corroborated similar experiences, many involving coercion and restricted communication. The so-called circle of grace wasn't just illegal. It was dangerous. And then she played the voicemail. Kent's voice, calm but cracking. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Liam needed some tough love. I never meant for things to go too far. The room went still. That wasn't discipline. That was admission. Then came the final nail. The letter Bethany sent to the pastor, claiming Liam ran away and had emotional instability. Timestamped before CPS found him dehydrated at a truck stop. A full day before they even knew he was safe. Strike 2. Kent's lawyer scrambled, trying to paint the story as a family disagreement blown out of proportion. Melissa asked him one question. Is it your defense that Miles, a single father with no prior reports, a full custody agreement, and a spotless record, intentionally abandoned his child just to spite his late wife's brother? The lawyer stuttered. Well, we're saying it's possible the child misunderstood the... She cut him off. Is it also possible that your client built a house of lies and wrapped it in a Bible? Objection. Sustained. But the point was made. Strike 3. When Kent was finally called to the stand, he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. His voice was still smooth, practiced, but he'd lost the rhythm. His tone cracked when asked why Liam had no way to contact his father during his stay. He needed space. From the world. Or from his parent. I was trying to protect him. By leaving him at a truck stop? That was it. That was everything. The judge excused him, turned to the room, and made a statement I'll never forget. This is not a question of faith or family values. This is a question of power. And this court does not reward those who abuse it. The gavel fell. Full custody returned to me. Kent was stripped of any legal claim to Liam. A formal investigation into Circle of Grace was opened at the state level. And, most satisfying of all, the judge ordered Kent to pay damages to cover Liam's therapy and legal fees. It was over. But I wasn't done. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper in a quiet room. Sometimes it's the click of an email being sent. A week after the hearing, I compiled everything, court transcripts, CPS reports, and that voicemail, and sent them to every church newsletter, parental watchdog group, and Christian education forum Bethany had ever been featured on. No commentary, no opinion, just the facts. And the facts spoke louder than any sermon Kent had ever given. One by one, his supporters vanished. Speaking gigs canceled. Sponsors pulled. The youth ministry page went dark. The Circle of Grace sign came down. Rachel texted me a photo of it lying on its side in a patch of tall grass, the wood warped by rain. Poetic, she wrote. I didn't gloat. Didn't post. Didn't say a word publicly. Because real revenge is knowing they wake up every morning with the memory of what they lost. Knowing the empire they built on control and manipulation collapsed under the weight of a father who simply refused to back down. And Liam? Liam is healing. Slowly. Beautifully. He still goes to therapy. Still has nightmares sometimes. But he's getting stronger. We cook together now. We go hiking. He's learning to drive. His laughter is starting to sound like it used to. Full, unguarded, loud. One night, a few weeks after the trial, he asked me, "Do you think people like Ken ever change?" I thought for a while. Then I said, "I don't know. But they don't have to. Because they don't get to control your story anymore." He nodded. And that night, he slept without the nightlight on for the first time in months. 6 months later, Liam stood on a small theater stage with a prop sword in one hand and a crumpled script in the other. He wasn't performing yet. He was directing. His school drama club had elected him as student director for the winter play, a comedic twist on King Arthur, and he'd thrown himself into it with a focus I hadn't seen in a long time. He was delegating set builds, coaching line delivery, even managing the tech booth like a professional. I sat in the front row during rehearsal, watching him gesticulate wildly with that prop sword, telling one of the other kids, "No, no. When you say you dare challenge the crown, you have to mean it. Think Kent." Then he paused, turned to me in the audience with a smirk, and said, "Sorry. Too soon." I laughed. We both did. It felt like a full circle. But the real ending came on a cloudy Sunday in April. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I saw the mail truck stop at our curb. The driver handed me a thick envelope, no return address, but the official court seal was printed on the corner. My chest tightened, but when I tore it open, I saw the words I'd been hoping for. Final ruling, custodial interference, guilty. Operating unlicensed child residential facility, guilty. Forgery of school documentation, guilty. False statements in legal petition, guilty. The judge's full summary ran 7 pages, but one paragraph stood out. I read it 3 times before the weight of it truly sank in. The court finds Mr. Kent Ellery's actions to be deliberate, coercive, and in violation of state and federal laws. His conduct constitutes a grave misuse of spiritual authority and familial trust. He is hereby sentenced to 18 months probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory psychological evaluation, and barred from establishing, operating, or affiliating with any youth-based program for a minimum of 10 years. Bethany wasn't spared, either. Though she avoided criminal charges, she was fined for obstruction and served with a civil lawsuit from another family who had joined our case after the news broke. Last I heard, she moved in with her sister in Alabama. Their marriage, according to Rachel, was fractured beyond mending. As for Kent, he faded. From the pulpit. From the community. From the very place he once ruled like a sanctified king. His church removed him quietly, citing differences in philosophy. His ministry's website was taken down. No apology. No statement. Just gone. And I never spoke to him again. Didn't need to. Because revenge, in the end, wasn't about rage. It wasn't about yelling in court or gloating online. It was about taking back control, restoring truth, making sure Liam knew, without a shred of doubt, that no one had the right to define his worth or steal his voice. And we won. Quietly. Completely. Now Liam's voice echoes in school hallways and across dinner tables. He's 17 now. His hair's longer, his smile quicker. He plays guitar like he's telling a story with every note. He's applying to colleges, wants to study psychology, maybe work with kids who've been through trauma. I want to be the kind of adult I needed, he told me once. I nodded and said, you already are. One evening, after rehearsal, we sat in the parking lot under a pale sunset, his hoodie pulled over his head and his sneakers tapping the dashboard. Out of nowhere, he said, do you think Mom would be proud? I looked at him, taller than me now, sharper around the jaw but still with that same boyish wonder behind his eyes, and said the truth. Yeah, she'd be proud of you. For surviving. For standing up. For becoming exactly the kind of man she always hoped you'd be. He didn't cry. He just nodded. And for the first time, I saw peace in his expression. Not relief. Not temporary quiet. Peace. Real, unshakable, earned peace. And I knew right then, our story didn't end with revenge. It ended with freedom. And that was everything.